Late at night, on a long flight, the business class passengers reclined in their wide seats, but a prominent female CEO sat shivering in the back row. She pulled her coat tightly around her, her teeth chattering, but no one noticed. Some even mocked her billions and couldn't bear the cold. Next to her, a single father sat quietly with his daughter, wrapped in a thin blanket. Suddenly, the CEO leaned over and whispered, "Can I get under your blanket?" The father froze. The curious passengers burst into laughter. They didn't know that this whisper was about to reveal a shocking truth. Jack Hale was 38, a former soldier, now a construction worker, a single father. He sat in seat 23B. His daughter, Ella, pressed against the window next to him. Ella was 9 years old, bright-eyed, with a gap-toothed smile. She clutched a stuffed rabbit and whispered, "Daddy, this plane is so big." Jack smiled. "Not as big as you dreamed, baby." An old military blanket lay across her lap, faded green, patched in 4 places, the edges frayed, but clean. Jack had carried this blanket with him on 2 overseas deployments. It had sheltered his wounded brothers, protected them from the desert winds, and it was his only one. The warmth of the frosty mountain nights now followed him and Ella everywhere. "Why do you always take this old thing with you?" Ella asked. Jack replied, "Just because it reminds me what's important, to keep people warm." Tonight they were flying to Ella's grandmother's. Jack had saved for 6 months to buy these tickets. They were economy class, but being together was enough. Across the aisle, in seat 23C, sat Clara Lane. Clara Lane, 31, CEO of Lane Industries, net worth $3.2 billion. Her face has appeared on the covers of Forbes, Fortune, and Time magazines. They called her the Ice Queen, a sharp cold, untouchable. But tonight, Clara looked small. She was wearing an expensive silk blouse, designer jeans, and a cashmere coat, but she was shivering. Her hands shook as she fastened her seatbelt. Sweat broke out on her pale forehead. Despite the cold, she felt a flight attendant pass by. "Ma'am, are you all right?" she asked. Clara nodded quickly. Too quickly. "I'm all right." She wasn't all right. Clara had a condition called Raynaud's disease. Her body couldn't regulate its temperature properly. The cold felt like knives, her fingers turning white and blue, the pain sharp and constant. She tried everything, medications, heated clothing, nothing helped. And tonight, the air conditioning on the plane was turned up too high. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, but it didn't help. Behind her, 2 men in business suits noticed one nudge the other. "Look at the Ice Queen, she's shaking." They laughed quietly, wickedly. The woman in the row ahead turned and smirked. "Billions in the bank, and the air conditioning can't handle it." Clara heard every word. She'd heard words like that all her life. She built walls, high walls. She told herself she didn't need anyone, but walls didn't keep her warm. Ella tugged at Jack's sleeve. "Daddy, why is that woman shaking?" Jack looked at her. He saw Clara's pale face, the trembling, the way she hugged herself. He recognized that look. He'd seen it in the field. Shock, cold shock. "She's cold, darling." Ella's eyes widened. "But, Dad, we have a blanket." Jack hesitated. The blanket was thin, barely large enough to cover 2 people. If he shared it with anyone else, Ella might freeze. But Ella was already pulling the blanket toward Clara. "Dad, you always say the more you share, the warmer you get." Jack looked at his 9-year-old daughter, wiser than most adults. He looked at Clara, trembling with loneliness. He had made a decision, but before he could move, the flight attendant's voice crackled from above. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be dimming the cabin lights for the night flight. Please try to get some rest." The lights dimmed, the cabin fell silent, and Clara's trembling intensified in the darkness. "Wait, what city are you watching from?" It's amazing how far stories like this can spread. Subscribe if you want to see this unexpected turn of events unfold with us. Now, back to the table, where everything had changed. 2 hours into the flight, most of the passengers were asleep, but Clara couldn't sleep. She couldn't stop shaking, and her teeth were chattering. She clenched her teeth to block out the noise. It didn't help. The man across from her woke up. He looked at her, then nudged his wife. "Look, the billionaire is freezing." His wife laughed, not loudly, but loud enough. Another passenger, he took out his phone, pointed it at Clara, and turned off the flash, but Clara saw that she had turned away. Shame burned in her chest, hotter than any warmth she needed. The flight attendant passed by again. She saw Clara curled up and shivering. "Ma'am, would you like a blanket?" Clara asked quietly. "Yes, please," she replied. The flight attendant disappeared and returned 5 minutes later empty-handed. "Sorry, ma'am, we are out of blankets in economy class. If you'd like, you can upgrade to business class. They have heated seats." The way she said it pointed sharply at Clara. Clara blushed. "How much?" she asked. $800, she asked. Clara could have paid without batting an eye, but something stopped her. Pride, stubbornness, the same wall she had erected. "No, thank you." The flight attendant shrugged and followed Clara out. A teenager whispered to his friend, "She's so fragile for someone so rich." Another voice, an older man, said, "Maybe money can't buy a rod." Laughter rolled through the neighboring rows. Quiet, cruel. Clara closed her eyes. She wanted to disappear. She had faced boardrooms full of hostile executives. She had closed multi-billion-dollar deals. They had fired people without batting an eye. But this public mockery hurt more than any business squabble. Ella was awake. She heard everything. She looked at Jack with wide, worried eyes. "Dad?" she whispered. "They're mean." Jack nodded slowly. "Yes, they're mean." "Why?" "Because people forget about kindness when they think someone doesn't deserve it." Ella frowned. "But everyone deserves kindness." Jack smiled sadly, proud. "You're right, little one." Ella didn't hesitate. She grabbed the edge of the blanket and leaned toward Clara. "Excuse me, Miss Clara." She opened her eyes to see a little girl with a gap-toothed smile and a stuffed bunny holding out a corner of a faded green blanket. "You can share ours," Ella said simply. Clara's eyes instantly filled with tears. I can't. Do you need this?" Ella shook her head. "Daddy says blankets are better when shared. And you look very cold." Jack met Clara's gaze. He saw humiliation, exhaustion, loneliness. He pulled the blanket tighter. "She's right. There is room here." Clara hesitated. Every instinct told her to refuse. She was Clara Lane, the Ice Queen. She didn't need anyone's help, but she was so cold and so tired. She leaned closer. Jack draped a blanket over her shoulders, barely reaching, but still something. Warmth instantly touched her, not just from the fabric, but from the gesture itself. Clara's voice wavered. "Thank you," said the man filming. He stood, came closer, and pulled out his phone, recording. "This is gold," he muttered to his friend. "The Ice Queen, the CEO, begs the janitor for warmth." He didn't say it quietly enough. Clara heard it, as did Jack. Jack's jaw clenched, but he didn't move, didn't react. Ella glared at the man. "My dad isn't a janitor. He builds things, and he's the warmest man in the world." The man laughed. "Sure, baby, whatever you say." He immediately posted a video with the caption, "Billionaire CEO Clara Lane freezing in coach." Apparently money can't buy everything. Within minutes, the comments began pouring in. She deserved it. Why is she even in coach? Imagine how weak she is. But Clara hadn't seen the video yet. She was too busy trying not to cry under the covers. Her hand was shaking. Jack noticed without thinking and took it. "Gently, calmly, breathe," he said quietly. "Are you okay?" Clara looked at him truly. She saw the scars on his knuckles, the calluses on his palms, the wrinkles around his eyes from squinting in the sun. This was a man who had worked hard, suffered, survived, and he was holding her hand as if she mattered. She whispered a question before she could stop herself. "Can I get under your covers?" Silence fell over the cabin. Everyone around them had been feigning sleep, listening and watching. Now they were staring with their mouths open. The man on the phone gasped. "Did she just do that?" His friend laughed. "It's getting better." Clara realized what she'd said. How had it sounded? Her face flushed. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted." But Jack understood. He pulled the blanket over all three of them, creating a small tent of warmth. "You're already under it," he said simply. "You don't have to ask permission to stay warm." Ella giggled. "We're blanket burritos now, no matter what." Clara laughed for real, a sob-like sound. She leaned her head back against the seat. For the first time in years, she felt safe with them. The passengers whispered, the phones glowed, the video. It was busy, but under that old military blanket, three people sat in peace and quiet. Jack's voice was soft. "What's your name, Clara?" "I'm Jack, this is Ella." "Hello, Clara." Ella waved from under the blanket. Clara smiled through her tears. "Hello, Ella." And for a moment, the world outside the window stopped mattering. Jack continued to pull the blanket over all three of them. Clara stopped shivering. Her breathing stabilized. Ella yawned. Dad, tell Clara about your blanket. Jack hesitated. She doesn't need to hear old stories, dear, but it's more than just a blanket. Ella insisted. Tell her. Clara looked at Jack curiously. Well, please, I'd like to know. Jack sighed. He ran his hand over the faded green fabric, over the patches, over the frayed edges. I was in the special forces. This blanket went with me on every mission. It's seen a lot. Something like that. Clara asked quietly. Jack's voice became distant. Remembering the mountains of Afghanistan, we were ambushed, 3 wounded, freezing to death. We had no shelter, no supplies, just this blanket. He paused. Clara waited. I used it to cover the wounded, kept them warm during the night. One guy, Martinez, was bleeding. Severe hypothermia was setting in. I wrapped him tightly and kept him under this blanket. He survived for 6 hours under the blanket. Clara's eyes widened. You saved his life. The blanket saved his life. I just held on, Ella said proudly. That's why they call Dad Ghost Wolf. He moves silently, protects people. Ghost Wolf. The name hung in the air. 3 rows back, someone stirred. An older man in his 60s with gray hair, a strong build despite his age, was listening. He stood and slowly walked to Jack's row. His face was serious. He stopped next to Jack's seat, looked at the blanket, then spoke. His voice was thick with emotion. Ghost Wolf. Jack looked up, his body tensing. Recognition flashed across his face. General Briggs. The older man nodded. I thought I recognized you, but I needed to see the blanket to be sure. Now the cabin was dead silent. Everyone was listening. General Briggs turned to address the passengers nearby. His voice was authority. See, this man, this blanket. I was his unit commander. Jack Hale, call sign Ghost Wolf. He led the rescue operation that saved 14 people, including my son. The gas spread throughout the cabin. The general continued. We were pinned down, outnumbered, with no air support. Everyone thought we were dead, but Ghost Wolf saved us. In a snowstorm, armed only with a rifle and this blanket, he carried my wounded son 3 miles through enemy territory, wrapped in this very blanket. He pointed to the patches, each one a separate mission, a separate life saved. Clara covered her mouth and looked at Jack with new eyes. Jack shifted uncomfortably. Sir, that was a long time ago. Heroism has no expiration date, son. The general looked at Clara. You're in good hands, ma'am, the safest hands on this plane, he saluted. Jack Sharp responded formally, then returned to his seat. The cabin erupted not in laughter but in whispers, but Clara froze. Her thoughts raced. Ghost Wolf, the blanket, a rescue mission. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking, this time not from the cold. She opened the photographs, leafed through old snapshots taken years ago, and found a picture of her young father in uniform standing with a group of soldiers, and in the corner of the photograph, barely visible, a faded green blanket draped over someone's shoulders. Clara's breath caught. She looked at Jack, then at the blanket, then back at the photograph. What's your full name? She whispered. Jack frowned. Jack Hale. Why? Middle name Thomas. Jack Thomas Hale. Clara's eyes filled with tears. You were with the 5th Battalion 15 years ago during Operation Desert Shield. Jack's face went pale. How do you know that? Clara's voice wavered. Because my father was there. Colonel Richard Lane. The world stopped. Jack stared at her. Richard Lane, I remember him. He wrote about you. Clara said. Tears streamed down his journals. He wrote about a soldier who gave up his blanket to save 3 people during a sandstorm. He said the soldier was denied housing, denied recognition. He simply asked to take care of people. Jack's voice was barely audible. Your father, he came home. Clara nodded. He came back because of you. He lived another 10 years. He saw me graduate from college. Walked me down the aisle at my wedding. Met his grandchildren. She paused, swallowing hard. Before I lost everything. She looked at the blanket. Understanding washed over Jack. You saved my father, and tonight, you saved me. Jack shook his head. I didn't do anything today except share a blanket. No, Clara said firmly. You did everything when everyone else was making fun of me, filming me, laughing at me. You saw me. You treated me like a person. She reached out and took Jack's hand. My father died of cancer 5 years ago, and with him, I lost the last person who made me feel safe. I built up walls, made myself cold, became the ice queen everyone called me. Her voice trembled. But today, under this blanket, I remembered what real warmth is. Warmth that's not money, not power, but just kindness. Ella listened quietly. Now she wrapped her small arms around Clara. You're not cold now. You're part of our blanket family. Clara broke down completely. She held Ella close and sobbed. Years of loneliness poured out. Jack placed his hand on Clara's shoulder, comforting them. The cabin was transformed. The people who had mocked her now sat in stunned silence. Shame was etched on their faces. The man who had filmed everything was looking at his phone, at the video he had posted, at the cruel comments. He stood and walked over to Clara's row. His voice was quiet. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'll delete the video. Clara looked up at him, her eyes red, but she nodded. Thank you. One by one, other passengers approached, apologizing and offering their blankets, jackets, anything to help. But Clara didn't need it anymore. She had what mattered: Jack's blanket, Ella's warmth. And for the first time in 5 years, she had hope. The general stood again and began clapping. Slowly, steadily, the others joined in. Soon the entire cabin was applauding. Not for Clara's wealth, not for Jack's heroism, not for humanity, not for kindness, not for the simple act of giving warmth. Jack looked embarrassed, but Ella was beaming, and Clara was smiling through her tears. Clara was smiling, genuinely warming up. The flight attendant who had refused Clara a blanket stood frozen in the galley. She had heard everything, seen everything. Now she came over, head bowed, and stopped next to Clara's seat. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I should have helped you. I should have. Her voice trembled. She was young, maybe 25. Tears were in her eyes. Clara looked at her. The flight attendant expected anger and vengeance, but instead Clara asked softly, What? Your name is Sarah? Sarah, we all make mistakes. Can you see me now? That's what's important. Sarah nodded gratefully. She hurried away and returned with a first-class, premium heated blanket. Please, take this too. But Clara shook her head. I'm warm enough. She pointed to Jack's blanket. Ella curled up next to her. But thank you. Sarah smiled through her tears. She turned to the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, these 3 passengers have shown us what is truly important. Tonight, let's show them the respect they deserve. Another round of applause. Louder this time. The businessman who had called Jack a janitor stood up. His face was flushed with shame. I have something to say. His voice echoed throughout the cabin. I judged this man, this family. I called them names. I was cruel, and I was wrong. He looked directly at Jack. Sir, you are better than me. And I apologize. Jack simply nodded. Apology accepted. The businessman sat down humbly. Ella tugged at Clara's sleeve. Would you like to see my drawings? Clara smiled. My pleasure. Ella took out her notebook. Crayon drawings. Home. A stick figure, a little girl, and now she began to draw a third figure. Long hair, a smile. That's you, Ella said proudly. You're part of our family. Clara's heart melted. She watched Ella carefully color, adding details. A crown on Clara's head. Because you're important, Ella explained. Not because of the money, Clara asked. No, because you're our friend. Friend, such a simple word. Clara couldn't remember the last time someone had called her that. By this point, the video had already spread online, but the plot had completely changed. Someone on the plane had filmed the speech, and it had gone viral. Instead, the comments poured in. This is what a real hero looks like. Clara Lane just proved she's human. Respect this little girl. She has more wisdom than all of us. I'm crying. This is beautiful. The news picked it up within hours. Major media outlets covered it not as mockery, but as inspiration. The man who originally filmed Clara deleted his brutal video and posted an apology. Instead, it received more likes than his original post. Inside the plane, none of them knew this, even though they were only 3 people short. Under the covers, laughing softly, Ella told Clara about her grandmother, her favorite stuffed rabbit, and how her dad made the best pancakes. Clara told Ella about her company, but in simple terms, I help people build things, like your dad. It's cool, Ella said seriously. Building is important. Jack watched them bond. His daughter and this billionaire CEO were finding common ground under an old military blanket. The general passed by on his way to the bathroom, stopped, and leaned toward Jack. You've always had a gift for bringing people together, Ghost Wolf. Some things never change. Some things shouldn't change, sir. The flight continued all night. The three of them cuddled together. Clara finally fell asleep, her head on Jack's shoulder. Ella snuggled close to Clara. Jack stayed awake, watching, as always, protecting the people under his covers. Outside, the sky began to lighten. Dawn was approaching. The plane landed as the sun rose. Passengers gathered their things. Many stopped to talk with Jack, Clara, and Ella. Handshakes, hugs. Thank you for the reminder. You changed my night. Jack carefully folded the blanket. Clara watched him. Jack, she said quietly, why do you still carry this with you? Jack looked at the blanket, then at Ella, then at Clara. Because it reminds me of what I'm made of. Not of violence, not of war, but of the moments when we cared for each other, when we were still human. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a gold pen with an elegant engraving. This was my father's pen. He carried it on every deployment, at every important moment. She handed it to Jack. He would have wanted you to have it. Jack carefully took the pen. He saw the engraving, the wear, the love. He reached up to his neck, unfastened his dog tags, and placed them in Clara's hands. Keep them to remember that honor lives beyond money. It lives in moments, like sharing a blanket. Clara clasped her fingers around the dog tags, unable to speak. Ella had been drawing, and now she handed the page to Clara. 3 people under a blanket, stars above, smiles on each face below, the blanket, family. Clara knelt and hugged Ella tightly. Thank you, Clara whispered, for teaching me what's truly important. They stepped off the plane together. Jack with the blanket over his shoulder. Clara held Ella's hand. The morning sun turned everything in the terminal golden. They exchanged phone numbers, promised to stay in touch. As they parted, Clara turned around. Jack, you said you left your battles behind, but I think you're still fighting the most important one. Which one? Clara smiled warmly. The battle against cold hearts, and today you won. Ella tugged at his hand. Daddy, we helped her, didn't we? Jack knelt and hugged his daughter. You helped her. Dear, you reminded us what warmth really means. Voiceover. Jack's thoughts. I thought I left all my battles behind, along with my uniform. But today my daughter showed me that sometimes the most important wars are the wars against cold hearts. And victory is warmth. Not the warmth of money or power, but the warmth of human connection, the warmth of a shared blanket, the warmth of seeing someone truly see you and choose kindness. Final scene. Jack and Ella walk to their boarding gate. Clara watches them go. She looked at the dog tags in her hand, at Ella's drawing. She pressed both tokens to her heart and smiled. Thousands of people continued to rush through the busy airport, but for a moment, 3 souls connected, shared. Warmth changed us. An old, patched, and faded military blanket did what expensive blankets could not. It saved lives. Subscribe if you believe that true wealth is the warmth we give to each other.